Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Srimati Smriti Irani and Navika Kumar, requesting them to come over on stage. And over to you, Navika, for this particular session as far as empowering women is concerned. And before we begin the session, if I can request you, Navika, to felicitate Srimati Smriti Irani.
Well, here's a small token of our appreciation from Times Now. Big round of applause for the Honourable. Well, Navika, will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Meghna. Thank you, Madhav. And ladies and gentlemen, presenting you Smriti Irani tonight, can we have a little more enthusiasm and a big round of applause? It's always a pleasure to have you at the Times Now Summit, Smriti Irani.
Thank you.
And as they say, from one woman to another, you are quite a packet. What is Smriti 3.0 all about?
I don't know why you presume that a woman who you presumably think is formidable has to keep repackaging herself, as though we in the public service or in public spaces have to redefine ourselves. I have never seen this question asked of a man. Normally men don't do this to each other. I believe that life is a plethora of opportunities, and each opportunity either ordains you with success or failure. It depends on you how long a journey would you like to undertake. I love every moment, every opportunity. So this new redefined Smriti that you possibly think will break shackles of the old systems or old memories that I've been a part of is just the same old Smriti.
So let me ask you, how does it work for a politician? You know, you've been in the thick of things, in the thick of politics, taking on probably the biggest opponent over the last decade or so. And now that, and you know, wins and losses in elections as in matches actually continue. For politicians, how is it different from it is for sportsmen? Because they also win matches, lose matches, depending on who's the best team that day.
I think that to genuinely answer your question, I'll have to refer to a journalist who's not a part of your group, but in fact retired from journalism and started podcasts. There's this gentleman known as Kamlesh Singh. He speaks in Hindi. It's called Tau. And he did this piece where he referred to my style of politics. And he spoke about the fact that kuch zyada hi kaam kar diya. I actually called him to say thank you, and he got a bit frightened because he thought that I'll give him a piece of my mind. But I told him that for the first time in 2 decades of me being in Indian politics, somebody gave me a new perspective. I led my whole 2 decades in BJP and in Indian politics, looking at politics as an opportunity to serve. If I was a quintessential politician, I would be more bothered about how to win elections from safe seats. If I was the quintessential politician, I would have reduced myself to a social media army, to a great publicity unit, to take amiable journalists to dinners and lunches. I unfortunately behaved more in the service of people, in ideology, in Sangathan, than look at myself only as a politician. If I was a politician who had a celebrity past, I would have possibly gotten a snook at, difficult assignments and tasks. And I think Kamlesh's intervention gave me a whole understanding of what I was doing in Indian politics.
Working too hard.
I thought it was a great privilege to have 5 years of service in a constituency where I could help build homes for 1 lakh poor families. It was my life's greatest privilege to help build something like a toilet in 3.5 lakh families. The fact that those 3.5 lakh families could begin each day with dignity, for me, was my political achievement. And if you look at politics from that perspective, and don't look at politics from a perspective of strategy, much changes with regards to your journey. So you're right that in sports, it's about individual achievements. In politics too, some presume that if you're individualistic in your achievements, then you've truly arrived. But those who look at politics as a medium of genuine service, you will see that they will forever be in the public eye. They will forever work for communities. They will forever work for their ideologies and their organizations. So that possibly makes me a bit different.
You are very different because from what one sees of you on social media, your presence hasn't decreased. You're pushing new boundaries. You're on some international fora. You're in Davos. You are all over the place. What are these new alliances that you're working on? And is this a break away from politics, or is this an extension of the political work that you already have behind you?
I came into Indian politics because as a civilian, I wanted to contribute in strengthening my country, in contributing to a resilient economy, in bringing about changes in societal rules or certain enigmas that needed responses legislatively. That's what drove me into politics. So today, if you see me on the international fora creating alliances, I have created mercifully an amalgam of 10,000 international companies in a network partnership with the World Economic Forum, and ensured that the CII, which is the Confederation of Indian Industries, again, that's a cohort of 435,000 Indian companies. I have said that in terms of gender equity, we will create the first secretariat within our own country, within our own industry bodies, which we successfully did in the past 1 year. We took our templates about women and enterprise and found a resonance with Commonwealth nations. 56 countries want to emulate what we are trying to do in India with regards to gender justice, provide opportunities for women in businesses. We have created the same template today as Alliance participants. We now have a B20 co-chair appointed by South Africa on digital transformation. So our contribution is the Indian contribution. It is apolitical, but at the same time, like Prime Minister Modi says, हम अपने लिए भी कर रहे हैं और दूसरों के लिए मार्ग प्रशस्त कर रहे हैं कि हिंदुस्तानी अब global good के लिए क्या-क्या कर सकते हैं. What can we contribute for global good while we set those examples in India so that they can be emulated across the world.
Is this fulfilling? Is this so time-consuming? Are you enjoying this as a break away from politics? Or
no, I'll go to London and have those meetings. I will go to New York and do meetings with the UN and come back for the Delhi campaign and go to Bhavana and Seelampuri. So my life is pretty sorted that way.
And Bihar?
Of course.
Bihar elections coming up?
Any election that comes up, not essentially only legislative assembly elections, but any time the organization calls me for an assignment, I'm always available, I'm always present.
So Smriti Irani, I want to ask you, how do women, you talk about gender equity, you talk about, women and how they chart their way. Is there a different yardstick on measuring the success of women?
I think that we should not confine ourselves to pleadings or pleadings which have forever defined how we speak about women and the cause of gender. I think the new realities that we are confronted with is the disruption technology will bring, especially in the lives of nations which do not own the technology, which do not own the enterprise, but who are limited by only building applications on top of enterprises. And I say this with earnestness, Navika, because today around 85% of the world does not own the technology, is just consumers of technology. Our country, our part of the world, is a part of that particular confluence. The other issue which has frighteningly come up, especially in the US, is that 70% of the jobs that women hold in that country are actually going to be obsolete when automation sets in. So I was there at the World Economic Forum when there was a conversation about AI agents and how that will shake up the world. And 3 days later, DeepSeek comes and the US loses $1 trillion. So to see disruption up close, what you as an Indian can do is how do I facilitate people within my own country against these disruptions. So this year, we have decided we will reach out to 300 of the most populous cities in India, reach out to 1 lakh women-owned businesses who have not had the capacity to cross the 1 crore threshold, go to them with banks, with insurance companies, with knowledge bases on certification and compliance, get together with global supply chains. We already have, as a part of our cohort, 2,000 international companies which have a yearly consumption and expenditure power of $4 trillion to teach these women how can they be a part of the global supply chain. One of the biggest challenges women, especially those who have worked, let's say, in self-help groups or FPOs or in SMEs, is the challenge of language. So we are in conversation with skill givers who will certify, especially if the British Council is kind enough to accept that, to certify the English language skill so that that can be used by women in business, especially those in the smallest of towns in our country. That is my ambition for this year. And I think you know me enough by now to know that once the standard and the goal is set, we will achieve it.
Yes, you will achieve it, Smriti Irani, I have no doubt. But you know something, I'm having problems adjusting to this conversation with you.
Because I'm not ranting about somebody politically.
Yes, because for the last 10 years, I've asked you all the questions that I wanted to about Rahul Gandhi. Can I still ask you those questions? But even though
it's a free country, you can ask me anything. But I think that the single sign of maturity is when you evolve and don't stagnate. So you may see me from a limited perspective of that one guy I defeated. But my life is not just that one chapter.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It is, I understand. I understand for you as a journalist that's of historical import, given that the sitting president of the Indian National Congress was never defeated before that. But it's time to get over it.
To move on? Have you moved on? I want to ask you, when you look at
I
Rahul
think you
Gandhi...
met me a day after my results were declared.
Yes.
And I didn't seem particularly jubilant. I was very, very stoic. And you were disturbed even then.
That's true. You always surprise everybody by coming
Because if you're not to be bogged down by failure, why should you be so ecstatic about success?
That's true. But there are people who are even ecstatic with failures.
They are, and it is their democratic right to be delusional.
So I want to ask you, Mr. Rahul Gandhi has been complaining that there's no longer any democracy even inside Parliament. As leader of opposition, he's not being given his chance to speak.
Isn't that an old complaint?
ये पहले तो बाहर का था, अब अंदर का है.
I think that there's a very old adage, old saying, that you can never demand respect, you need to command it. And for you to command respect enough to have Parliament come together and listen to you, irrespective of your politics, that's the hallmark of a true leader. I've been in opposition, and I did not have the privilege of being the leader when I was in opposition. In fact, I was one of the youngest when Jaitley sir was the leader of my party. And at that time, when I spoke on issues like sexual harassment at workplace bill, or when I spoke about the Nirbhaya issue, irrespective of which political ideology was represented in the House at that time, irrespective of the seniority of the parliamentarian, I had a rapt, attentive audience within Parliament. So I think that it is more a reflection on the aptitude of the individual than to blame Parliament. Parliament runs by certain standards and rules. It is a privilege to serve there, and if you have not created that respect for yourself, you cannot blame the Parliament or the Constitution.
But they say that the way Parliament functioned was fairer earlier than it is today. In the regime of...
when they were throwing out MPs when they agitated for Telangana, was that fair? When journalists were hiding tapes on cash for votes, was that fair?
Well, Smriti Irani hasn't lost her punch. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think...
Why would you think I'd lose my punch?
No, certainly not. That's why I just
Punjabi
feel that...
father who had a Maratha mother and a Bengali parentage as well.
How come?
I mean, if there is anything which is explosive, it's that combination.
Talking about Marathas, there is this huge controversy that is going on about Shivaji, Sambhaji, Aurangzeb. Do you think going back into history and discussing whose mazar should be there or thrown out is really the way to take India forward?
Do you think not recognizing challenges of the past can prepare you better for the future? Do you think denying atrocity can prepare you better? The true essence of democracy is when every side has a voice. The true vibrancy of democracy is felt when even if you don't agree with somebody, you do not stifle their voice. Which also means, especially with regards to those who are from the Hindutva fold, for them not to be denied their space to speak. Now, not many may have spoken on this, and dare I push that envelope, but India has, when it was at the threshold of independence, seen three kinds of Hindus fight against the British. One who spoke about non-violence, which was Mahatma Gandhi. One who took up arms against the British, that was Bose. And the other who stood by the Constitution to bring the country together, that was Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. So you choose how you respond to a certain challenge. But do not say that only those who turn the other cheek are to be accepted.
Okay, today's day and age, I don't think anybody is turning the other cheek for sure.
There are still some. You cannot deny it. Because when you look at outrage, which makes headlines at 9 in the night, it is bereft at times of voices. When a journalist, a female journalist, is dragged to a police station in Punjab by the Aam Aadmi Party and made to release herself and go to a loo where she's watched by men in the police station. That journalist happened to be your journalist. How many were speaking up for her?
It's a lone battle sometimes.
It is. So you cannot be selective about outrage. You cannot be selective about when you want to stand up for freedom. There are people whose hands and legs were chopped off in Kerala because they belong to a particular ideology. 6 months ago, in the state of Telangana, you had students and journalists jailed because they had an opinion on social media. Where is the outrage? There are youngsters who are hung out publicly in villages in West Bengal. Women who are dragged by their hair, raped because they had the audacity to sit for a political party at the polling table. Who outraged?
But everybody outraged about the vandalism that happened after
Were people
Kunal Kamra,
arrested?
who's just a
Are
stand.
people arrested? Most definitely so. If they were not
let out
arrested,
on bail one day later.
if that is the law. Even those arrested in Telangana were arrested, but they were arrested for making a political point against the Congress party. What was the sin done by your journalist? Please explain to me. What happened to her? Please explain to the audience. A female young journalist dragged to a police station because she's trying to report something, and the humiliation heaped upon her is go to the loo and let the men watch her. Tell me which one of the audience members saw anybody shouting from the rooftops about freedom then.
We did, and the court stepped in, and thankfully for us, the ordeal of 3 days came to an end.
And that is not the only state. You faced it in Bengal as well. Who stood up? Who wrote a guilt letter? Nobody. So if you stand for freedom and the privilege of that freedom that you enjoy, stand for everybody.
But then just dragging people to court, hauling them to police stations. For example, Beer Biceps, Ranbir Alabadia, podcaster.
Well, I've been to court. 2012, Gujarat state elections. I was on live TV. A congressman abused me on live TV. I've been going to court from 2012 to 2025, even when I was cabinet minister, stood in Patiala House with rapists and murderers, only waiting for justice.
But that individual is now part of a political party who's in alliance with your party.
Absolutely.
So how do you accept
You
that?
don't. You still go to court. They tell you it'll take another 20 years. Fine, I will keep going to court. But the question is, every time I'm abused, can I keep filing FIRs and keep going to court? Then how do I build my life? So it's an individual struggle. It's an individual life journey. You need to stand for your principles, and it'll cost you for sure. But I go to court and I stand there.
But Ranbir Allahabadiya, you've been on his podcast, I think, a couple of times. And
Just once.
okay,
Yes.
once. And, he made a
Abhorrent.
statement.
Absolutely. Distasteful.
Distasteful.
Yes.
But being dragged to police stations to answer questions.
That's the system. That's the law. Nobody questioned when I'm standing in court. I had 3 drunk men accost me while I was cabinet minister. I was in a car alone. It's a case which is currently in Patiala House for 10 years. They thought I was alone in the car. They couldn't see my face, they said. So for them, they said, if we had only realized that she was Smriti Irani, we wouldn't have done it. Which means these 3 drunk men, for a normal female, would have done God knows what. But they stopped because they suddenly realized it's Smriti Irani. So I went to court. And in court, as cabinet minister, I sat there while 3 men who were drunk actually had their lawyer stand in front of me and completely assassinate my character. I didn't wield the baton that I'm cabinet minister. I stood there, humiliated, deposed between the judge, the lawyer that was questioning me. I was questioned for 2 days in court. I didn't call any journalist to cover. You didn't know this.
And you have something to say about the justice system in our country, the manner it works, and
My
especially
responsibility as a politician is to keep hope alive in the judiciary. On these 2 cases, I speak from personal experience. I went to fight for my self-respect, and I'm still fighting. 13 years in court.
But you are
So those who think people in positions of power and constitutionality have this little button they can press, and instantly all the gods from heavens will descend on people like me and give me fair justice, need a reality check. It is my responsibility to still, irrespective of what happened to me, keep people's hope alive in the 4 pillars of our democracy.
So
To
you're
keep
saying
people's
it's a
hope
long,
alive,
arduous journey for women?
Yes. I mean, if I was a quintessential politician, I would have taken those journalists who have been known to be extortionists, fed them a nice little meal, in some way made sure that I have friendships with them, done a friendly fire with the opposition in parliament so that I make the completely right noises, but go out for an evening dinner in Khan Market with them. I don't live that dichotomy.
You're not part of the Khan Market gang.
I am not part of any gang. If I was a quintessential politician, I would be a part of some gang or some camp.
Are you saying other people in your party do that?
No.
So who does this? Who are you referring to when you say extortionist journalists are with them?
Wouldn't you love me to name the person?
Yes, I would.
No.
I would.
Go
And
investigate.
Smriti Irani speaks her mind. Why should
I do.
Yeah,
I
so-
do.
So please
Tell me
at
which
least give us
journalist.
a hint.
Tell me which journalist has spent time for extortion. Come on, start naming.
The
don't do the
interview is by me, of you, so you please respond.
This is a democracy. It is
No.
by me, for
No,
you,
I'm
of
the
us.
journalist here and you're the politician.
So why don't we throw this thing open? Let the journalists get questions from the audience. Name the journalist.
No.
No?
I'm not allowing this because
See,
I
she's
will.
stifling voices. She's against freedom of expression.
No, I'm not against freedom of expression. I just don't want to pick up the tab for libel. And you,
See?
So you think it will be libelous? What you may want to say?
I will only say this. No, I don't care about it being libel. If truth is libel, if truth has to stand in court for 13 years for justice, I'd rather be true, even if it's libelous. That's not the problem. The realities that we live in have to be reflected upon. And that's my statement. If Navika Kumar doesn't want to name them, why would you expect politicians to name them?
Well, the day I only have a YouTube channel to run, maybe. I'm not taking the bait today, but let me ask you, Smriti Irani, how do you define yourself?
I don't.
You don't?
No.
Because
definitions will restrain you to a silo. Don't make that mistake.
you started your life at the Miss India pageant.
No, my life started in 1976. Thank you very much.
No, as in your work.
No.
Okay, what did you do before that?
When I was 17 years old, in Janpat, I sold cosmetics on the street for $200 a day. When I was 18 years old, I joined a courier company where my job was 4 o'clock at Palam Hawai Adda, then go to Nai Delhi railway station, then go and check the Golda Khana, and then come back to east of Kailash above Sapna Cinema and write a roster. That was me at 18. At 19, I decided I wanted to own a part of the logistics company, so I went to Bombay and tried to buy out, and I didn't have the money. At 22, when I went to Miss India, I had to borrow money. But after being a Miss India finalist, I had no job, so I went to the first McDonald's ever opened as Smriti Malhotra, that was my maiden name. And I used to sweep floors there and wash the dishes for $1,800 a month after being a Miss India finalist.
But you could have been a model, you could have walked the ramp.
Yeah, that was easy, I guess.
You didn't want to do that?
No, because I never wanted to be known for my physicality.
But then you went for the...
I didn't want to be... I went to Miss India because that was the only space my father could not pull strings.
The other places he could?
Yes. Media was the only sector where he knew nobody. So I went to the one space where the success or the failure would be mine.
Okay.
So what Times of India gave me at that time was a shot at freedom.
And you started setting your own rules from then on?
No, I think I started at 17. When you are judged at 17 for $200, that is more harsh. By the time you're 22 and you're a finalist, you're supposed to be a so-called beauty, which makes it worse, but still, it's better than being on the roads for $200 a day.
So you didn't, after McDonald's, you didn't ever think that, the money would be better in modeling or films
No.
or something?
I was very clear I couldn't run around trees. I was very clear. I could not stand behind a hero who did a banyan ad. That was not me.
So then what?
I got a shot at Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi because the paycheck per day was more than what I made in a month. So I was not interested in being a star. When I walked in, the male actor got 10 times more than I did. And I was very conscious of the fact that I could not afford to not have that job. But I knew that by the first year when my contract ended, I could negotiate a pay scale better than the man. So they had to change 4 male actors, 4 Mihir, but there was only 1 Tulsi. And by the time I left, I had the highest paycheck Indian television ever gave out to an actor.
And then you said, ab ye bhi nahi karna hai, politics karna hai.
I was BJP's Yuva Morcha vice president in Maharashtra, and Devendra Fadnavis was Yuva Morcha vice president with me in Maharashtra when Dharmendra Pradhan was president in India, the Indian organization, in 2003. Prime Minister Modi is the second Prime Minister I'm working with. I had the privilege of working both with Prime Minister Vajpayee and Prime Minister Modi. I was in the National Executive of the BJP when our party leadership had Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Advani ji at the helm. I've been the BJP National Secretary twice, once with Rajnath Singh ji as President, once with Nitin Gadkari ji as President. I was Nitin Gadkari ji's, was Maharashtra President, I was Secretary there. Then I was the BJP Women's Wing President. So been there, done that. I've been in BJP organizational positions for 2 decades. People discovered me in 2014, that's another issue altogether.
People discovered you even before that, Smriti.
No, I
Irani.
think the HRD...
Don't they remind you about some of your statements from
No,
before?
I think that many people thought that I was of some importance when I became the HRD minister. It's as though the life before 2014 didn't exist. So I still meet a lot of people who go, oh, hey. So...
Do you have, I want you to speak candidly. Do you have batchmates?
I mean, is there any room left for me? I mean, am I not candid enough?
No, but do you
I've
have
even done
batchmates?
ho and hair here.
Do people, do you have friends in the
No.
party politically?
No.
No?
No, because I don't think you come to politics to make friends. You come to politics to serve people. I didn't go to media to make friends. I'm very clear. I take that word friends very, very seriously. If you are my friend, I will literally go to war for you. I will defend you. I will literally push all boundaries.
So colleagues, they're just colleagues?
Yes, and that's not a bad word.
But you're a team.
So you've been, you have possibly reported at least on my experience as a minister for a decade. I've never gone to any political parties, evening get-togethers. You've never seen me. Those who've seen me in media would never see me in media get-togethers. I never socialized.
It's
a miracle I have a career of 2 decades without socializing.
Do you think it's because we are women and we have to bring up kids? Nahin?
Come on, women socialize.
Nahin.
Nahin, I mean, give me a break. Do women socialize?
Of course they do.
Of course
but
they
women
do.
who have careers like yours and commitments like yours between a minister's job and family.
No, people still socialize. But I don't. I never socialized, like I said, in the media or in politics. I was very clear that, Navika, nobody's... It's a very filmy line, I guess. मैं ना कुर्सी के लिए जाने चाहती हूँ, तमगे के लिए नहीं, कद के लिए नहीं, काम के लिए people should know me. I have no such delusions that I suffer from. That people that I meet in politics when I'm in a position of power are going to be friends for life. Delhi is a great leveler for anybody who has even half a measure of sense. Nobody is friends with you here. Everybody is transactional. You have to be completely out of your mind if you believe people are here to make you a great friend of theirs. Media in itself, people who struggle through media, they tend to come together in times of strife. I was a union worker when I was in the media business. So we would come together when resources were limited. But our coming together was also dependent on the fact that we were stretched for resources. It did not come from a sense of celebration. I mean, none of us had homes, none of us had, mobility issues. We didn't have cars. We were all, sharing autos in the first year of Kyunki. So that struggle brought you together. But both in media and in politics, there is a huge sense of competition. Friends can't compete with each other. Friends
Very
don't.
well said. What next for Smriti Irani?
Oh, if you're asking my schedule,
No,
then
I'm asking
April
you.
is what? I've been privileged to be invited on a lecture series in Ivy League colleges. I will be looking at a semiconductor unit in the US. I will also be in LA talking to some studios. So, I mean, there's a plethora
Studios,
of things.
are you going back and
You
doing...
talk about it as though, it's a very disdainful word.
No, I'm just wanting to know, get the mystery out and what's Smriti Irani going to do next? If she's going to the studios, I better ask her.
No, I mean, I can go to studios as a producer,
Oh, so...
I mean, I was one.
And now...
I was a writer as well. I'm a published author. Don't do and haw with me right now.
No. Okay, so are we seeing Smriti Irani in a producer, actor, some sort of a role coming up
Who
soon?
knows? Let the story write itself. But at least you'll be interested enough to come back.
Okay, yes, you piqued our interest. Smriti Irani, as I say, is always full of beans. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for the conversation.
And ladies and gentlemen, it has to be louder than that. Thank you very much, Smriti.